Hello, all you hardcore boxing fans out there. How are you doing? It's Big P here, the voice of hardcore boxing. Uh, we've got Julian on today. Let me just give a big shout out to Spartan Demolition and Civil Engineering and Welcome Estates, Eastwood Autos. How are you doing, Julian?
I'm smiling, mate, because I'm looking at this profile picture you've got on of Eddie's not looking too handsome there, mate.
Oh, I don't know if you've noticed it last couple of weeks. Eddie's he's not wearing his wedding ring as well, so he's having a bit of a nightmare, isn't he? This last couple of months.
Didn't notice, mate,
Noticed it.
because obviously being 5-0, like he is with 3 KOs, his hands are that quick. I probably wouldn't have even noticed. It'd just been a blur with his wedding ring. But I didn't know that.
Yeah, we're not saying that he's got a bit of bird trouble, but for a man that's had his wedding ring on for over a decade, and all of a sudden he's not wearing it, there's something not right in there, unless he's just having it polished.
But you never know, dear. I mean, I've been there myself, and it's expensive. But if there is trouble at Mill, it's going to cost Eddie a lot more than it cost me.
Yeah, yeah, it will. There's a lot going on, Julian. So let's get stuck straight in. Uh, has anybody seen Ben Davidson lately? We haven't had any sermons off him, have we?
I mean, I don't look for them. As you know, I watch some of this stuff when it pops up, but he's definitely not been popping up on my channel as much as he used to do. Just having a search on YouTube, and you get the breakdown from Ben Davison, and I've seen very little of him. So if he has been on YouTube and various platforms, I've not seen him.
Yeah, I don't see. We don't see much of him. We used to get. It's funny actually because there was a period of time where every Monday there'd be a Sunday sermon and a Monday mass from Caldwell and Ben Davidson.
Yeah.
Plenty to say, but nowadays we don't seem to hear much from them, do we?
Well, that's the thing, and you've said this so many times. And I was chatting to a mate of mine today, and we were just talking about a similar type of thing. We said some of these people you can't shut up, can you? They're like shit in a field. They're everywhere when you switch your TV on, and all of a sudden, when things are a little bit bumpy and things are tough and questions need asking, they're nowhere to be seen. And that's one thing I'll give you, mate. Throughout, the problems that you had in Turkey, all kind of issues you've had, you're still visible, aren't you? You're still there.
Not today. I've got a few camera issues, but
Well, yeah, yeah. But you hear me, don't you? It's like you got to be consistent. You got to be there to deliver good news, be there to deliver bad news. And I'm not thinking these guys are having a great time right now.
No, and it's funny actually because Eddie's brought a book out and it's called Relentless, and he's done interviews. He said, "I'm relentless," but I'm not hearing that same energy at the moment, Julian. What do you think?
Well, I caught some of the videos that you did earlier, and you and I have chatted about the zone potentially. Let's just say cutting funds.
You've seen the video that I showed you, haven't you?
Yeah, I certainly have, mate. And I think, look, there's definitely something in it. We've talked about this for a couple of years. You work for a massive platform, you have a period of grace, and then that second financial year, you got to start to deliver. And what I'm not seeing, because even though I no longer subscribe to the zone, I still get the junk mail, if you like, and I get these emails all the time, plugging shows and plugging shows. I'm not seeing that many great UK shows shaping up right now.
No, and like I said, DAZN are cutting their budget by half. So these non-pay-per-view events that DAZN are going to put on in the UK, fighters are going to be paid less apparently, and the shows are not going to be that good. So will we see a lot of people jumping ship? Because you know what boxing's like.
Mm-hmm.
After number 1, don't they?
Well, we've seen people jumping ship. The pundits, haven't we? Pundits have been jumping ship for a while, and we talked about Spencer Oliver, who's been brilliant and refreshing recently, but he was all over Eddie, wasn't he? And I thought it was quite interesting what Spencer said recently. Actually, he said, "I love Conor Benn and I like Eddie." It was the words and language, as you know. I listened to the language very carefully, and he was saying, "I love Conor Benn and I like Eddie. He didn't say I love Eddie, and I thought that was interesting. So we're seeing pundits and broadcasters and other people jumping ship. You'll start to see that with sponsors. If you're a boxer and you're looking to be out 3-4 times that year, you're either going to be out less, you're going to get paid less, or the opposition's going to be not that great, or you're going to get put in 50-50 fights. Regardless, everything that's been promised to fighters is going to be really, really difficult to deliver. So the budget looks like it's been cut significantly. But not only that, because absolutely everything is going up, as we know these days. The revenue, everything's inflationary, stadiums, rent, all that stuff's going up. So they're probably, if they've cut it by half, they've actually cut it by less than half. So his purse strings are going to be really, really tight going forward. They will be saying, what do you know? What do you know? Well, we'll find out, won't we? And what we do know is some of these, Olympic gold medalists, we know you're fighted, but some of these Olympians didn't go with DAZN and didn't go with Matchroom, did they? And why is that? Is it because Sky have got deeper pockets, or is it because DAZN no longer have the pockets that they used to have?
Well, I think what happened is they came into the market aggressively and they were paying people like Tommy Coyle, Megado,
Mm-hmm.
and other people, and people were like, wow, look what Eddie's paying. We all want to be with Eddie. And then what happened after a period of time, that money sort of dried up, didn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Looks to me like that money isn't there and he's in the wilderness, but he's took that much from them to start with. I don't think he cares with. I think they're about money. And I think what they've done, they've sold the soul to the zone, knowing that the bubble's going to burst soon and Joshua ain't going to be around forever. But Joshua's not been on the zone, has he? He's been on Sky his last two, hasn't he?
Well, unless I'm missing something, the zone's return on Anthony Joshua so far it stands at 0.
Yeah.
And how long have Eddie and DAZN had this relationship, and still you haven't got a pay-per-view event with Anthony Joshua? And it's dreadful business, really, isn't it? And the one person who was trying to hang everything on, we all know was Conor Benn, and we know that's gone awful quiet right now. And I remember saying to you, Russell, a few months ago, we're having a conversation about Eddie Hearn, and I don't think Eddie Hearn is a great spotter of talent. I've said this before. It's really easy to go with either the pedigree Olympians, the elite amateurs in the country, and throw money at them, or to go with those who have got, very, very marketable, people like Conor Benn for obvious reasons. But what about actually spotting talent? What about the kids who are not the 10 times national champions? What about spotting talent and bringing kids through? And I don't
like Mick Hennessy. Sorry for putting in there, but I just want to get this in about Mick Hennessy. He's known in boxing circles as the guy who unearths the gems.
Mm-hmm.
Hennessy, he goes to all amateur shows and he's always looking to sign kids and looking for that real good, rough diamond kind of thing. He's done it with Carl Froch, Tyson Fury.
Yep.
You know what I mean? That went with Mick at the beginning. Darren Barker started with him, didn't he? Chris Eubank turned over with him, Chris Eubank Jr. So Mick Hennessy is a spotter of talent, but is Eddie Hearn?
Absolutely not. And I really do not believe that. I believe Eddie Hearn loves boxing. I believe he loves being around boxing. He loves being around boxers. But I truly don't believe he has an eye for talent. But if he doesn't have an eye for talent, and I'll explain that in a second, then his team around him better do. So how many times do we see, him sign fighters who we all know from the amateurs or, very prestigious fighters and put them with this production line of the same coaches every single time, the McCrackens, the Tony Sims, etc. First things first, if you really truly know boxing, you don't place boxers with the most well-known coaches in the best location. You put boxers with the coaching team who's going to really do something with their style. And I don't think that's something that Eddie's been doing, for example. We're seeing this factory and production line of fighters going with the same coaches and not being developed. So, again, I don't think he's got an eye for talent. I don't think he's got an eye for development. And, some of the fighters that he's had, you'd think that you wouldn't be able to miss, wouldn't you? If you look at, I always like to look at Joshua Boazzi. I always bring this up, but Joshua Boazzi was an absolute outstanding amateur, and he was red hot in the 2016 Olympics. So what's gone wrong with Joshua Boazzi's career? That he's not active. He doesn't look to be getting that much better to me. He's not getting the right opponents. So it's a whole mixture of things. And I'd be thinking about those type of things if I was him. And as you've just said, Mick Hennessey's, he'll have his ear to the ground. He'll have his ear to the gyms. He'll know what people are talking about. And sometimes, generally it comes from coaches. Sometimes who coaches in boxing are talking about and raving about aren't gold medalists. They aren't national champions. They're other kids who you just know that they're going to do something really special. So I think there's so many flaws in Matchroom's game, and throwing money at the successful amateurs is just a formula that's not really working for him.
Yeah. Do you feel that looking at the statistics, they've had world champions Matchroom, but they've only really had one world champion from debut who weren't from the Olympic teams. Herbie Hyde. His dad had a, and they didn't even count the WBO back then, did they? The magazines, they didn't rate it. But it weren't like classed as the fourth belt then. It were like some pygmy, wasn't it, kind of thing. But they've had Herbie Hyde. But who else has he had that's not been from the production line, Olympic teams? And I can't think of anybody from debut to a world title. He's not. But whereas Frank Warren, he's done it, and he's got people world titles. Ricky Burns,
Yep.
People like that. He took people from debuts to world titles, and he's like knows the game, doesn't he? Even though, he's got the morals of a sewer rat, according to Hatman. But Frank's probably hardened to it. He probably weren't like that at the beginning, but it makes you like that, doesn't it? He never gets too close to his boxers, does he? He always
No, not daft. I think that's a good thing, not getting too close to your boxers. But I think, like we've said before with Eddie, I think he gets close to the boxers who are popular. He doesn't get close to the four-round opposition, does he? The imports, the journeyman, the kind of fringe British level.
Like my family, he said, didn't he?
Yeah, fighters are like my family as long as they're really well known, they look really cool in my company, and they're making me a ton of money. I always wonder, and I might be wrong, but you mentioned Tommy Coyle earlier, so I know Tommy. I've known Tommy a long time. He used to come to my gym, or the gym where I was coaching, or where I was the head coach at. He used to come over and spar my lads, and you always got the impression that Tommy Coyle had a really good friendship, didn't you, with Eddie Hearn? And maybe that's still the case, but you never hear him mentioning much, do you?
No, he doesn't seem to mention Tommy much now. He's not going around to Tommy's for apples and pears, is he?
No, that's not happening now, is it? I guess Tommy's maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they're best mates. Maybe they're on the phone every single night. But it's always interesting, isn't it? He's friends with the guys who he thinks he can use, like Tony Bellew, for example. Tony Bellew. I always think he has Bellew thinking, do you know what? I could still get one big fight if I'm that desperate. Because Bellew's an exciting guy and everybody wants to watch him, and he draws people in. I always think he keeps certain people around him in favour just because he thinks, do you know what? I might one day need Tony to make a comeback if I'm struggling for a headliner. But the rest of the people who are his friends, who are these people?
I don't know. Has anybody seen Tony Bellew yet? We haven't heard from him, have we, for 2 weeks?
It's been a while. I think we've not heard from, you know me, I like Tony Bellew, but we've not heard from Tony Bellew since Ben failed the drugs test, have we?
Oh, he's gone quiet, hasn't he?
And I'd say it was at that exact pinpoint moment we haven't heard from him.
We've heard a lot from Spencer Oliver. He's been very critical about the situation, hasn't he? I want to ask you, Julian, about Boxing Board of Control. I've been told Robert Smith retires in 4 weeks. So maybe there might be some scope for the Gary Sykes's British title belt then, with somebody new in charge. What do you think?
Who knows? It's definitely one to revisit. mean, I don't know if Robert Smith ever catches these videos or not. I'm sure he hears about them because we know that license holders, well, they not only hear about these videos, but they subscribe and watch, but they call themselves something different. So anybody who's got any decency, you know, it's like the president, when the president's going to come into the end of his tenure, and there's certain things that he can do. You know, he has like pardons, like Trump gave pardons, didn't he, for like, you know, people on death row and all that kind of thing, or other things. I think Jack Johnson got a pardon from Donald Trump, obviously, posthumously. It'd be a really great thing for Robert Smith to look at Gary Sykes's case again. I'm always open to having that conversation with him. Not a mudslinging conversation. I've spoken to him several times about it. I would love to have, you know, a coffee with Robert Smith and just appeal to his better nature, appeal to his decency, appeal to the fact that he's a former fighter himself, you know, who boxed at a decent level. And I'd love to have a conversation with him and say, you really did a bad job of looking after Gary Sykes's mandatories. The central area did a really bad job of, you know, making it clear to us whether Janssen was or wasn't a mandatory. And, you know, we found out lots of things that was contrary to what the Board of Control's position is. But what I can tell you, and I don't like to go into too much detail, I have regular contact with Gary Sykes. You and I talk about this all the time, Russell. And I would honestly just really appeal to Robert Smith and say, listen, Gary Sykes is not in a great place right now. He's served British boxing fantastically. And there was no prouder British champion than Gary Sykes. You need to give him the belt outright. He deserved it. There's lots of things to talk about, but that could be such a great thing that Robert Smith could do. And not only would it like make a young man very, very happy and a town very, very happy, he'd also be doing the right thing. He'd be doing a just thing. And you know what? It'd be such a good thing for him to do in terms of his own PR, because if he is retiring next month, and I do wish him all the best, I genuinely do wish him all the best and a happy, healthy retirement. But I would like to think that he'd do the right thing by Gary Sykes, and I think he really should do. But if he doesn't, maybe you're right, Russell. Maybe it's something we can resurface with whoever is the new head of the Boxing Board of Control.
Well, I don't wish him well anyway, so that's just how I am. Now, getting on to the British Boxing Board of Control, the silence on the Conor situation, there's still silence from them, even though they had from the 23rd of September to the 6th of October to say that fight were off. Why did it take those 2 weeks or 13 days, should I say? What were going on in them 13 days, and why are they so silent? And why is nobody putting it on them now? Not even the newspapers. Why is this happening?
It stinks, doesn't it? It absolutely stinks. And what you have to do is listen. When that test became knowledge to the teams involved and the commission, which is obviously the Boxing Board of Control, as we know, this was 2 weeks before the fight was due to take place. The Boxing Board of Control, I'm sure the same due process wasn't followed, but like Frank Warren said in the Boxing Board of Control handbook, if there is an adverse finding by any anti-doping agency, then the Board of Control can act on that. They can declare the event is done. So they had 2 weeks to sort this out. So what they could have done was insisted upon a B test, the B sample, which none of us have seen. And that would have made it really, really clear. You get the B sample within 24 hours to 48 hours. And then they could at least cancel that fight officially 10, 11, 12 days before it actually happened, before people were booking hotels.
Yeah.
I'm not blaming the board, by the way. I'm blaming, the Conor Ben and Matchroom. But before people booked flights from abroad, booked hotels, booked travel, booked days off, made big plans to come to this event, the Board of Control, I'm sure, could have acted a hell of a lot quicker than they did. But again, they're not pacey, are they? They're not an organisation that works quickly, that does things quickly. But they certainly could have worked quicker than they did. And anybody who, like yourself and me and thousands of other people, who were suspicious of the fact that the British Boxing Board of Control's memorandum came out within hours of the report coming out from the Daily Mail. And to say that was just coincidence and we were going to put this out anyway, who really believes that?
Nobody believed them. They all came out and said they did the best for boxing, but Eddie Hearn were trying to get the show on, wasn't he? And then he came out and said, me and Calla decided the best thing to do was to pull the show and all this and with the board and that. But no, I think they all got caught with the pants down. And I think that the Eubanks told the newspapers. That's what I believe. And I think in their heads, because they're proper messers, Eubanks, aren't they? They've messed up on several occasions now with fights, haven't they? Now, and I can see why he finds it hard to work with them. I think I think they said something to Daily Mail or somebody else, but I'd say we're old man. It looks like it's pointing that way, doesn't it? He's dropped it. And that's what I think happened. I think that, and then the board have had to cover their asses, haven't they, and come out and pull the show, haven't they? Do you know what I mean? But I think the arrogance from them, because that's what it is, pure arrogance, thinking, well, we've got the Dylan White Rivers fight on. It would say same adverse test, you know, this adverse word, but people need to understand what adverse means. I've seen paperwork when Liam Cameron got busted for cocaine and it were adverse this and adverse that. I remember sitting in an office with Dennis and Dennis just went, adverse, it means he failed. Why do you use fancy words? It means failed. He's failed for cocaine. Remind all this, it's only adverse. Look, adverse makes it sound like it's some minute thing that's not there, doesn't it? It's a failed dope test. Let's have it right. Liam failed for cocaine. It's in his system. Whether he's old money that's had a cocaine on it from people selling tickets, or he's took it. He says he didn't take it. He's just handled money from people that have, you know, there's loads of money that's covered in cocaine, the same box. And if that's the case, wear gloves or get your mates to deal with tickets. Do you know what I mean? But Conor Ben's failed, and I think they've all got above the stations. They sit there, board or don't know that we're the board. We're like Don King. He always used to say, "The commission's nothing. I'm the commission," didn't he? Well, it's only board. I run them. I do what I want. I'm Eddie Hearn, and I think the arrogance from them to not say anything to anybody from that 23rd of September to leading up to fight week. Nobody said a word, but they all knew. They went on national TV on This Morning. Do you remember?
Disgraceful.
Right, so with Piers Morgan and a lot of them, or whatever they were doing, or that This Morning Pro, they went on national TV, ITV, and
GMB.
Good Morning TV, the main program in the country in the day in it. They all knew and they kept it to themselves and they let everybody book hotels. And that's why they can't come out and answer questions. That's my opinion. I don't know.
Listen, it's disgraceful, isn't it, to know that event is very likely not going to happen, to still squeeze money out of people and all of the people subscribing to DAZN to get the pay-per-view. There's a lot of people don't subscribe to DAZN as well. So all of those people who have done that and just to get their cash, you know, they always say, don't they, when you get someone else's money in the bank for a short period of time, you know, any business will try and be cash rich. And that's what they've tried to do. And even if they've only got people's money in the bank for 2 or 3 weeks, it's a bit like when your energy bills, when they have you in credit and they're keeping your grand over credit and they keep it because it's better in their banks because they're getting interest. And you have to wonder if there's an element of that, but it's a disgraceful. I can't get over it, Russell. You and I chat about it all the time. We spoke about it on here several times. I can't get over the fact that Eddie Hearn wanted to continue with this show. I can't get over it. And you know what? And I'm going to be polite how I put this as well. I love Nigel Benn. I loved him. And you're going to defend your son. That's what you do. You know, I went to see Nigel Benn. I saw Ben box against Eubank the first time. I saw him box against Steve Collins in Manchester at the MEN. I followed Nigel Benn. I just thought it was brilliant. But he should have stepped in sooner himself. And you know what? The whole thing he's not only tainted his own career, Conor Benn, I think to some extent he's tainted his father's legacy as well.
Yeah, I do. But the fact that he's not come out and said anything, I don't know. I mean, what he's got to come out and do a statement, surely, soon, surely.
I think they're so arrogant, they'll always be a, you know, look, I'm not suggesting some of these people involved are narcissists, but one thing I do know about narcissists is they will never own something and they will never say that they are wrong. They're always right and they're always the victims and they just won't own up to something. That's a narcissist, tendencies. Those are things that are consistent with narcissism. And I don't know, there's something about it. I don't believe, we had a bit of a wobble a while ago thinking, do you know what, they're going to get away with this. I don't think they're going to get away with it. I don't think there's any contamination with the sample, but we just don't know, do we? But I don't think there's going to be anything untoward from VADA. I think the test is what it is. The B sample will show exactly the same thing. I think what they're now doing is they're challenging the legality of some of the steps, challenging the board of control, and that this is it's just a smoke screen, isn't it? And what they're also going to do, as we know, is they're going to talk about, there was tiny amounts of this drug in the system, thinking that we're all stupid enough to say, oh, well, he could have ingested that doing something else. He could have had a packet of smoky bacon crisps, and there could have been some of this female fertility drug in the crisps, and they're going to do anything they can to a bit like the I always bring a parallel in, I always bring an analogy in. Remember the O.J. Simpson trial? They always tried to bring in doubt for the prosecution's case, and they made it really, really smoky and really musky, and they spread doubt around it. And I think that's what Eddie's doing now. They'll be trying to spread as much doubt about the legitimacy of the tests, about the small amounts in Conor Benn's system, and they'll be looking to have some story that they think we are all stupid enough to believe. And they'll think that we're automatically going to forget the fact that Conor Benn was, as we've said before, he was having up and down fights with light punching Frenchmen, and he looked like he was slapping his punches, and that came from his dad, not from us. The way he was throwing punches, he was sunken chested, he had a long, thin neck, and now he's blitzing people into next week. Blitzing people don't get blitzed. And they think we're going to forget all of that stuff. They think we're going to forget about this doctor said he was part of the camp, even if he's only been for a short while. They think we're going to forget all of these things, and they're going to throw doubt around the legitimacy of the adverse finding. And it's all going to be a smoke screen. They're going to hope they can negotiate some kind of small ban that they'll do very, very quietly, maybe 6 months, maybe 12 months, and then before you know it, nobody will be talking about the banned substance, and Conor Benn will be back in 12 months. And if that's the case, seriously, I'll be out of this, watching this game. It will just be awful. So I want him to get at least 2 years, yeah. if the B sample or whatever. But let's not people say don't fine a man. He's guilty. It's an adverse finding. As you've said, it's a positive test. It's a positive test. Now it's on him to prove his innocence. It's not on VADA to prove he's guilty.
Yeah. What do you think is going to happen with DAZN, though? I know we spoke about this earlier, but you think Eddie's going to have to start using his own money to put these shows on to get to pay fines?
Eddie's money. I mean, he was all right using his dad's money. I don't know what his own personal wealth is, but we can't get away from the fact that 10 years ago, whenever, Eddie did a really good job of putting British boxing back in the public eye, or certainly making these events big. We've covered all that, but the last couple of years, I think he's done more to harm boxing than he has done to promote boxing. And in terms of DAZN, I don't care who Eddie Hearn is and what people's wealth is. If you've got a business, a private equity business owned by shareholders and various other kind of people, investors, and you're losing £700 million a year, and you can't deliver anything with any impact in the UK, in terms of DAZN. People still don't know about DAZN. People still don't know this app. People don't understand it. You know, even when I was subscribing, Russell, I know I'm going on a tangent slightly. When I was a subscriber of DAZN, the whole menu, the whole navigation of the landing site is awful. It's really badly put together. The quick shows that they do, the garbage shows that they do are just awful. The production quality, remember him saying game changer, the production quality was going to be off the scale. And, you know, he had Mayor Jammer in and people like that, and it become like cardboard. I think the whole thing's actually failed really badly. And it's going to be time to get out of Dodge soon. I really do believe that. I think they'll be pulling the plug, and it'll just, in the UK, they'll say, do you know what? DAZN is big in the US, probably big because the competition are doing $100 pay-per-view events. You know, they're outpricing these events, and DAZN might very well, with other things in college football, etc., might do well in the US. But I think DAZN, in terms of boxing in the UK, has been an epic failure. It's been a massive business failure, and it'll get wound down and it'll get closed down, and within 2 years there won't be a DAZN in the UK.
Yeah, I believe that. I mean, who's their biggest star in UK on DAZN? Joshua, but he hasn't fought on there yet, has he? Has he fought on DAZN yet?
Well, Anthony Joshua can't get a win for love nor money right now, can he? He's all over the place. You know, they were talking about him fighting in December, even if it wasn't Tyson Fury. They've even said that's now been pushed back to January, February. Who's AJ going to fight? And
If he fights again.
If he fights again, but one thing's for sure, because he thinks AJ is a pay-per-view fighter, are people really going to pay 28 quid to watch Anthony Joshua fight some absolute mug? I don't think so.
I don't. High octane sofas. What did you think to his commentating? A cacophony of noise, added spice, rough, tough, rugged.
It was, I don't, the man loves it, doesn't he? Like we've said, he's living his best life.
Can you imagine having his breakfast in the morning? I don't know whether to go for Weetabix or Cocoa Pops. What do you think, love?
It's just too much, isn't it? You know, these things to get excited about during a fight, isn't there? Such as knockdowns, exchanges, brilliant pieces of skill. But when you're getting giddy and you're getting carried away and you're just watching an undercard fight, it's just awful, isn't it? So I think the
sad thing, Julie, I'm sorry for butting it, but this is, I have to say this before I forget. Well, short-term memory loss, but do you remember that ringside interview where they had Larry Holmes on there, and
yes,
Dean were going on about when he remembered the great fights from the 70s, and he got his dictaphone for Christmas. Oh, he went to school with his this is what I thought, God, he's so passionate, it's unbelievable. He went
loves it,
didn't it? And he was walking right playground at school, and he was going, down goes Spezia, down goes into his dictaphone in the playground at school. I wonder what all his friends thought about him.
He was probably quite an odd boy, wasn't he? There's nothing wrong with that. But look, I love the passion. As I've said before, I've spoken to him before. He's a nice guy. But listen, maybe they're just trying to polish turds, because what we're actually seeing is not that exciting and not that good. I don't know. But it's too much, isn't it? And you can't beat Reg Guttridge when Reg used to do the big fights in the late 70s, early 80s, and he would speak when he needed to speak. And it's just a bit too much, isn't it? It's like Jerry the King Lawler on WWE. It's just like listening to Jerry the King Lawler now. It's kind of, what happens is people can become a caricature and a parody of themselves, can't they? And I think that's happened with Adam Smith. He's just become a parody of himself.
Yeah, I agree. Do you want to switch over to part two, pal?